Welcome back to NewsX World. I'm Asuma Kataoka and you are watching Focal Length, where we get you a briefing on topics from across the world. As Western sanctions intensify and energy geopolitics grow more complex, global attention turns to how Russia and its major trade partners mounting financial and trade restrictions, with the US threatening secondary sanctions and the EU tightening its energy embargoes. Pressure is building across markets. Meanwhile, Russia's pivot towards non-Western alliances and alternative payment systems signals a shift in the global economic order. At stake are oil prices and financial stability, as well as the resilience of Russia's economic defenses. Joining us now from Moscow is Paul Goncharoff, principal of Goncharoff Limited Liability Company and seasoned voice in Russia FSU markets. Paul Goncharoff, a native New Yorker, has spent decades navigating business landscapes across Asia, the MENA region, Europe, and since the late 1990s, Russia, where he is now based full-time. As principal of Goncharoff LLC, he advises Russian and international firms on integration, operations, and strategy across the Russian Federation and former Soviet Union, with hands-on management experience in diverse environments. Today, he breaks down the credibility of U.S. threats against Asian oil imports, the evolving impact of EU sanctions, and how Moscow's financial tools, from reserves to counter-sanctions, are being deployed to weather sustained Western pressure. Thank you for joining us, Paul Goncharoff. My first question to you is, now how credible are President Donald Trump's threats to sanction India and China over Russian oil imports, and what mechanisms could Washington realistically employ to enforce such measures without destabilizing global energy markets?
Well, the short answer is none, really. Today was the 1st of August, and the listing was already published. Who gets tariffed what on the first go-round? The added penalty sanctions, let's say for India, is rescheduled now for the 7th of August. So I don't know how your listeners may feel about it, but coming out with international foreign policy on Twitter or X doesn't seem very presidential. And I think that the fear quotient or the respect quotient that Donald Trump may have had before the election and the first 2 weeks after has largely been frittered away. I don't think most of the serious diplomatic world take him very seriously, as it's a flip-flop every day. One day it's one thing, another day it's another thing. As far as increasing the sanctions, well, from Russia's point of view, this has been going on since 2014. Of all countries ever in the world, Russia is the most sanctioned throughout history. I mean, think about that for a moment. So 17, 18, 19, or 20 more rafts of sanctions really are a waste of time and opportunity.
And Paul, now building on your answer, so if the U.S. were to impose secondary sanctions on major Asian purchasers of Russian oil, how might international capital flows and commodity trading patterns shift? And which financial centers stand to gain or lose?
Well, first of all, if it's the oil sanctions, and let's talk about Russia and India for a moment. That may affect 10%, which is really insignificant. India buys a lot more LNG from Russia than any oil. The oil would be insignificant, the effect. What would be significant in terms of secondary sanctions is the effect these additional punitive measures, if they come online after the 7th of August, would be to the textile and agriculture industries of India. Because you've got around 45 million people directly employed in those areas. But still, That's not the end of the world. I'm sure it'll give headaches to Mr. Modi, but he's a very capable man. I'm sure he'll find a way around it. And it will sharpen India's interactivity within BRICS and the global South. America is not the end-all to be-all destination for the export of product. So it'll be an evolution that will happen. It's inevitable. It'll just be sped up a bit.
And now, Paul, assessing the depth and scope of current EU sanctions on Russia's energy and financial sectors, are there signs that these measures are materially squeezing Russian state revenues, or has Moscow found effective workarounds?
Mostly effective workarounds. Of course it squeezes. I mean, you can't sanction somebody every which way to Sunday without having it in effect. But look, Russia's been under sanctions since well before, in the last century, the Jackson-Vanik Act. And then if it's not one thing, it's another. So since the squeeze was put on after 2022, Russia has rather effectively found workarounds.
And now, Paul, despite years of sanctions, Russia has built substantial foreign exchange reserves and capital controls. In your view, how sustainable is this defensive posture if Europe and the US tighten the screws further?
Well, they will lose a resource market. Russia will gain resource markets outside the traditional two-lane highway in Europe and the US. And look, the world is a big place. And it's what really does, let's say, Europe have to offer Russia? Very little. Russia's found its sourcing elsewhere on our planet. As far as America is concerned, Russia's worked around that sanctioned alley for many years already. So I don't think there's any real suffering. There's inconvenience, yes. But as far as financial degradation, I don't see any.
And Paul, now how would additional Western sanctions on Russian oil exports impact global oil prices? And what feedback loops could emerge between price volatility, consumer inflation, and central bank policies?
Well, that's a bit above my pay grade, I guess. But I don't see the prices of crude or the price of energy dropping. Let's just give you the simple answer. No matter what happens, if Europe is going to be dependent on the United States for its energy supplies, that only points to prices going one way, up. With the unstable geopolitical situation throughout the planet, I don't see things calming down in the Middle East, in the Gulf of Hormuz, especially since very few are playing peacekeeper. And that's a very real risk. We haven't seen geopolitical risks at this responsive a level in the markets for decades.
And now, Paul, secondary sanctions often have unintended spillover effects. What risks do you foresee for non-Russian emerging markets if banks and traders face punitive measures for facilitating Russian oil transactions?
Well, what can you say? This is more and more forcing the issue of getting out of dollars and euro. And it forces the issue of using regional currencies. And that's really the path. It's very supportive of the entire BRICS idea, because the more you beat people over the head with some colonialist idea of do it our way or take the highway, there is also the emotional response. people do have pride, deservedly so. And to be constantly lectured like some errant child, I think India, for one, has grown way out of that. So have most countries in the global south.
Yes, indeed.
So,
And now Moscow has threatened counter-sanctions and deeper ties with non-Western partners. How might Russian financial authorities deploy sovereign wealth funds or alternative payment systems to blunt Western pressure?
well, they're not doing it to blunt Western pressure. It's very much a desired goal, and we're already seeing it with the new development bank of BRICS. These are steps taken because countries like Russia, like Iran, like Venezuela, and many, many others that haven't been directly threatened, but indirectly have been threatened for decades, are finally looking for a safe space to conduct business without all the restrictions of you have to follow this set of rules or that set of pathways. Look, everyone knows their own national interest, and they're certainly not always aligned with the G7.
Yes. And now looking ahead, lastly, 12 to 18 months, what scenarios do you consider most plausible for the Russian economy under sustained Western sanctions, and which indicators should investors monitor to gauge the regime's fiscal and financial health?
That's a very full bowl. I'd begin at the beginning. Have a look at what's happening on the Moscow exchange, MOEX, the St. Petersburg exchange, which is changing its profile quite significantly, insofar as that it is an alternative now to London and COMEX, joining with Shanghai as another gold hub, much like the UAE. So while the West is in love with watching how sharply they can crack a whip, Russia is doing business.
Yes.
And they're getting down to finding alternatives and establishing them not as alternatives, but as the main routes of action. Other indicators are those that are published most everywhere. Baltic stats, most any of the classical indicators. I have no secret recipe.
Okay, all right. Now, to what extent can Russia leverage its partnerships within BRICS to circumvent Western sanctions, and how might an expanded BRICS agenda reshape the bloc's financial architecture in support of sanctioned members?
Well, look, if one believes the words of President Donald Trump, BRICS in and of itself is anti-American. Right? And I'm as an American saying, I can't believe the man said this, that it's all anti-dollar. Well, if it wasn't, and it isn't, it certainly will be, because the more of this sort of diplomatic niceties and gentle expressions, he's just insulting the planet. And anything but the U.S. dollar. And if you ask any responsible banker or investment manager, where is a greater risk? In investing long-term in government paper, T-bonds and bills, or investing in new development bank, right? I think today it's much more likely you'll get a little leaning towards the new development bank. Problem is, everything is very new. So it takes time to become worn in and traditionalized.
Yes, and thank you, Paul Goncharoff, for speaking to us on Focal Length. Thank you very much, and sharing your insights with us today. Your expertise and perspectives have been invaluable to this discussion. With that, it's a wrap on this episode of The Focal Length. For more international news and updates, stay tuned on NewsX World.